I don't know how to even begin talking about Ashok, so I'm not really going to try, and I'm probably just going to go straight into my talk. But I do want to say that that Ashok meant a lot to me, and he was just, I don't know, I think everybody thought of him as a dear friend. He had that quality that could make any one individual feel very special. I have a photograph. Let's see if this works. Where do I point this? With data, working with fantastic people, but he always kept in mind the fact that he was an analytical guy, and his, it comes out in his work, his beautiful work that Oriklit referred to. And I want you all to see, I put in here, later on I'll send you the, again this thing is, I guess it's a 2-second lag, Ashok talks to a bunch of undergraduates about his career. Yeah, and it's delivered in typical Ashok style. And then in the middle comes this astonishing quote, which I love. He says, the good thing about big data is that you can't wildly speculate anymore. But the bad thing about big data is that you can't wildly speculate anymore. Which really cuts at the core of what Ashok was all about. So I'm going to take that as an invitation for this talk, and I'm going to just wildly speculate. So this is just a wildly speculative talk, and we'll see where it goes. But there is this in India, written with his long-time co-author Mukesh Ishwaran, and he was deeply concerned here with questions of development and distribution. So I decided to choose that as my topic, but it's going to be a little bit more sort of speculative, crystal ball gazing, just for us to have a fun time and sort of think about where the future of development might take us, right? Distribution is that there are two aspects of it. One is functional, so the idea is how much is labor getting, how much is capital getting, right? And the other is personal, namely how you map from how much labor and capital is getting to the final personal distribution of income, and that of course will depend on how people are accumulating, what kind of things they're buying in terms of assets and so forth. Now, if I had to talk about both of these aspects, this would be an interminably long talk. So I've decided to focus here more on the functional, but later on I'm going to come back and comment more on the personal. So as I've written here, changes in the price of endowments and personal tracks changes in the ownership of endowments. And the theory of economic inequality must really address both components. So next slide. Okay. And yeah, click all the way down to the end of this slide. Okay. So essentially there are two perspectives that you can see in the literature when we talk about economic development. The first is what one might call the balanced growth perspective, which goes back all the way to the work of Ramsey and von Neumann, and this whole idea that development is a harmonious process by which you come into some sort of steady state, right? An ever-changing sequence, right, of new sectors coming up. Some people being lucky enough to rush into those new sectors, maybe they're well positioned to do so, and then everybody else rushes in after that, whereupon the relative price of that sector comes down, and then some new cycle opens up. Now, many of you, all of you probably, have heard of the famous Kuznets inverted U hypothesis, right? And where does the Kuznets inverted U hypothesis come from? It comes from the idea that there is just one cycle. Why is that? Because Kuznets lived in the 30s and 40s and 50s when the main intersectoral movement was just going from agriculture to industry. By the way, rests fundamentally, and I'll also talk about it here, on the non-homotheticity of preferences. The balanced growth view cannot exist unless you assume that preferences somehow are homothetic. So as we grow, we consume the same proportions of different commodities. Because if you were to consume different proportions, you can't have a balanced growth environment, right? So it's obvious to any of us in this room that the assumption of homotheticity is ridiculous, right? But of course, if you take the assumption of non-homotheticity very seriously, as we should, then we are led inevitably to this, after all, why does an agriculture industry transition happen, right? It happens because preferences are fundamentally non-homothetic. The law of capitalism, okay? So what's the fourth fundamental law of capitalism? Is that, that's the blue sentence at the top. With economic growth, capital displaces labor, and the labor share in national income must progressively vanish. Piketty's third law on a t-shirt, right? But it can be stated quickly enough so that it can go on a t-shirt, mankind. This is not, you know, I'm supposed to be clicking. Nothing is a law. What I'm going to say is not even testable. When I say that the share, it's like saying in the long run we are all dead, or in the long run you're something. So the fourth fundamental law is not even testable. Of course, I can write down stronger forms of it which are testable. Nice picture which comes from the work of Veronica Guerrieri, where she's looking at why, and you might ask, she's looking at the trend in labor shares over time, and you might ask, why are there so many lines? Well, percentage of the economy that goes into self-employment. When it goes into self-employment, you must make assumptions about deciding what share of self-employment income is to be called capital income and what share is to be called labor income. Yeah? But no different sectors of the economy. So within sector argument. Yeah? So you see this for a bunch of different sectors that the share, that the labor share is for. Now, if you want to think about why this might happen, we can think of many obvious reasons, and probably all of them have some role to play. So one famous argument, of course, is globalization, the China shock. Now, the China shock, of course, might be a good argument for developed countries, but it wouldn't explain, for example, why we continue to have, let's say, a falling labor share in India or China itself. Yeah? Anti-union regulations and so forth, then firms can take advantage of that and place higher markups. And when they place higher markups, that creates a tendency for the share of capital to rise,